Chapter 3 The Way Back. Tell me what this dark spirit wants from me, I ordered the book to say. I had ended up close to Mordor's castle. It looked as dark and ominous as ever. With the book under my arm, I headed for it. I had to revisit it. You have to figure that out yourself. Why? You probably have the answer, right? I do, but even I can't say it. It's not just best for you to find it out yourself. I simply can't say it. What do you mean you can't say it? Just like everyone else, we're prevented from saying anything. So this dark spirit doesn't want me to gain any information. What is this, some messed up test? Perhaps it helps to see life as a test, to see if we're strong enough to fight against the dark and to fight for the light. I was crossing the wooden bridge, which still remained impervious to heat for some reason. But then I remembered something. Didn't the bridge burn down? I could have sworn that when Mordor summoned the lava from the ravine upwards, the bridge melted away. Something really weird was going on, although it could simply have been replaced. No one should have to watch their friends and family die. I wouldn't judge anyone if they were to give up. Does that mean you're planning on giving up? I felt like I wanted to say yes, but something held me back. I can't do that to her. To who? My sister. Ah yes, that is a good resolution. Eventually, I stood at the foot of Mordor's castle. I gulped, remembering the last time I was there. Still, I opened the doors and entered. I passed through the hallway where the walls were decorated with weaponry. I remembered when Mordor tried to kill me with it. While I passed through the hallway, I kept talking. So how do I beat this dark spirit? Can you tell me that much? Be you. I'm getting kind of sick of this, speaking in code. Drake, all you have to do is continue fighting. I sighed. Exhausting. I opened the big door and saw Mordor's black throne at the end of the room. I looked at the corner of the room, remembering it was where Tyrell lurked when I first met Mordor. I wondered if his skeleton still remained at the bottom of the ravine next to the palace. Drake, can you tell me what your main objective was in each of your adventures? I went and sat on Mordor's cold stone throne. My adventures? It started off with having to defeat Mordor. Having to? Well, they were relying on me. I felt like I had to. And in your second? Again, to save Rosium from Mordor after the gods screwed up so terribly. And your third? To save the world once more? And your fourth? Do I really have to say it? Now, why was it always you? Why were you the one to have to save the world each time? Because, I don't know. I felt like it was my responsibility. Exactly. But in none of those occasions you were obligated to. You kept on saving the world because you wanted to. So, for whatever is coming, I want to ask you to change things up a little. What do you mean? For once, I want you to fight for yourself. Fight for what or who you love. This is your story. I didn't know what to say. I was thankful. It's not easy to lose, and we can do little to control that. Just don't lose yourself. If you lose yourself, your journey might just end a little too soon. Stay strong, Drake. I will. Thank you. While processing all the information, I decided to leave the castle. I hadn't had time to properly mourn for my friend. Therefore, I found it difficult to keep myself from letting a few tears. The anger I had built up inside had to be released in some way, I thought. And I knew exactly how. As I walked over the bridge, I took a few more steps, turned around and looked at the castle. With the book pressed against my chest with my left arm, I raised my right. I pointed at the ground underneath the castle. I tried to focus and channel all my anger into one action. I made the ground underneath the castle tremble. The earth cracked and the ravine was splitting. Slowly, the castle sank. Parts broke off and soon enough, there was nothing left. The lava swallowed everything of Mordor's castle. As the last tips sank and went up in flames, the area was left cracked, shattered, and filled with lava. That was a long time overdue. It felt good to channel my anger into destroying Mordor's former home. Are you planning on going back? The book asked. What else should I do? I need my friends. Any idea on how to find your way back? I realized he didn't just mean to ask me what direction to go. I know the way. Mentally, I do not. I'll figure it out. That's the spirit. Like that, I made my way back to the palace. Only then, I noticed how far I ran without realizing. It took a very long time to get back. I did have an idea of how to get things to go faster. As I made my way to the mountains, I tried to climb to the top. Surprisingly enough, what I hoped for turned out to be true. Arian was looking for me, and I could see him in the distance. I knew he wouldn't be able to hear me, so I summoned a ball of fire which I threw towards his line of sight. I noticed he startled a bit but quickly found peace in knowing it was me. Or well, that's what I thought. Arian came at me with an incredibly fast pace, and I soon realized he wasn't planning on landing. Drake? Yeah? He's not stopping. I know. I didn't have much time to react, so I made a ball of myself while bending the rocks below my feet and forming a shield. Soon enough, I felt Arian crash into the shield with such a strong force that I was blown away. While it made me drop the book, Arian recovered unusually quickly, and as we faced each other, I noticed his pupils were colored red. He spread his jaws and started spitting fire. I quickly made a cross with my arms and blocked the flames. Not you too! I didn't know what to do. I wouldn't be able to lose him anywhere, and I could never try to harm him. Luckily, I had something or someone with me who was more knowledgeable than I was. Drake, through the earth! What? You can do it! I turned 180 degrees while blocking the flames with one of my hands. With the other, I aimed at the ground and tried to do what the book told me to do. I kept surprising myself and I turned the rocky surface into sand. I prepared to run when I let go and worried I wouldn't make it in time. But as soon as I let go, I ran, picked up the book and made myself fall. Before the flames broke through, I sank through the ground. It had suddenly turned pitch black and I couldn't see a thing. I focused on changing everything around me to sand and excavating a route through the earth. Anything I wished for miraculously worked. I had the elements in my grasp, but it all took a lot of getting used to. Before I wanted to change my trajectory, I could sense an open space a few meters below me. I kept letting myself sink until I ended up in an open area. Luckily, the area wasn't that broad, and my fall was eased by the sand. It was still dark, but when I summoned a flame, I noticed I had ended up in a cave system. I could have tried to dig straight up again, but I was too curious. At the time I had only one direction to go into, and that way I went on a little adventure. Yeah, not a very clever idea. After a while, I was lost. The cave had already split several times and I had no clue where I was or if the cave system would even lead anywhere. I'm done, we're going up. You can't. Why not? Or you can't tell me that either. Because, screw it, I'm out of here. Without listening, I excavated a pathway above me. Bad idea. You're underneath an ocean. Gallons of water began raining down. I protected myself from the water until it became too heavy. I pushed myself off the ground and shot myself upwards against the stream. Suddenly, I was at the bottom of an ocean. It was pitch black. I tried to push myself upwards as fast as possible in order to make it to the surface. I could have made a bubble by forming a dome of air, but there wasn't any air to begin with. Luckily, a light started getting in and eventually I could see the surface. It wasn't as close as to when I swam away from a kraken, but it took me quite a lot of seconds to catch a breath. I froze a part of the water and used it as a raft. I climbed onto it and exhaustedly awaited recovery. I still tried to hang on to the book for some reason. As I laid it down, I noticed something unusual. How are you not soaked? I'm quite impervious to basically anything. Geez, can I get some of that? The next thing that got me to be forced to move proved to be an unpleasant challenge. At first, the rain got me to open my eyes. But then I noticed something move in the corner of my eye. Plesiosaurs. I startled at first and wondered if Pi was any close. Those creatures were creations of Pi and not inhabitants of the ocean if I recalled correctly. The ice had already melted and I was floating on the water until the plesiosaurs caught my attention. I startled again when I realized something. Where was the book? In the time that it took for the platform to melt, I think I was out. I was freezing, surrounded by monsters and not sure whether to go look for the book or not. I chose to search for it. Something drew me to want to keep it with me. Even though it was a shot in the dark, I dove under. Because of carrying a bubble of air with me, I could breathe underwater for a longer amount of time. In order to see underwater, I tried something else unusual. I formed another bubble of air around my hand, put it underwater and tried to summon a flame. Although it only lasted for a few seconds, as the oxygen quickly ran out. But I had to try. I shot myself to the bottom of the sea. As it turned dark, I summoned the flame. I then saw how close I was to the seafloor. Not even close. I tried to go as fast as possible and summon it again, but this time I had eyes on the seafloor. As I kept the flame from dying, I scouted the bottom of the sea, but I couldn't go too fast so the flame would extinguish right away. Eventually, it was close to dying, and I couldn't find anything. I then thought of the possibility that was floating on the sea, and seeing as my air was running out, I had to get back up anyway. As I changed my trajectory, I almost lost my very life. The plesiosaurs were apparently following me, and one almost managed to snatch me. As I barely dodged it, I tried to get away as fast as possible, but despite my capability of moving through the water like a torpedo, the plesiosaurs were still slightly faster than I was. I was clueless. I wanted to go up, but the way was blocked. My flame had already gone out, and I could only see the plesiosaur's red eyes getting closer. They started catching up to me, but then the way ahead showed an unusual blockage. Pi appeared out of nothingness. He looked furious, though his eyes weren't red. What did that mean? Pi aimed at me, and I noticed the water around him swirl, and whirlpools formed. I pulled the brakes, protecting myself right before I would crash into him, and thought I was a goner. I suddenly felt myself getting sucked in as the ground was swallowing me. My bubble popped, and I had only a little bit of air left. I was pulled through a hole and ended up in a cave system, and in some way, I ended up back in the same cave system I was in a while back. The entirety was filled with water, and I quickly had to find a way to breathe. I swam to one of the walls and placed my hands on it. I tried to sense where the closest open space was. Perhaps there was a part not connected to the rest, therefore not filled with water. Sometimes I did sense what the distance was between open space and me, but it was all too much. Eventually, I had to go for it. I started smashing into the wall, but because of the water, I was way too slow. A different approach. I pointed my hands at the wall and focused on breaking it without moving my arms or anything. I got it to crack and eventually managed to excavate a way for me. I was sucked in, and as soon as I ended up in the open space, I closed the opening. I coughed, and when I could finally breathe, I still felt like I was choking. I laid down in the little bit of water that had come through and stopped moving. I was so tired. As I summoned a flame, I could see where the cave led to. I had two options, so I went into the direction I figured would lead me closest to Dragonia. In order to keep myself warm, I had the flame, but I was still drenched. I tried something I recalled having seen Calypso do before. I aimed at my chest and pulled all the water out of my shirt. Miraculously enough, it worked. As I did the rest of my clothes, all that remained wet was the bottom of my shoes as I walked through the small creek of water. I wondered where it came from, as it couldn't have just been the water I let in by making that hole. It had to lead somewhere. I walked for hours and wondered if I'd always just gone into the complete opposite direction of Dragonia. Perhaps I was already kilometers away from even Rosium. If that were the case, I'd be lost for good. No way to know where to go, no idea what was beyond Rosium, as there was no one who did, and no clue where I was at that time. I felt miserable. All I could think about were the moments when Mother and Maya died. I still couldn't believe it. Light. I searched for light for hours and hours, other than the light my flame created. And hours I was unlucky. Miraculously, when light did come in, my eyes had to adjust. They weren't used to light, but also gave me the feeling they were betraying me. The cave expanded and the creek grew a little wider. It wasn't until I could see the sky again and I saw the skeleton of a mountain troll I knew where I was. I found the way back.